You can see the full interview with Nobel Peace Prize winner Muhammad Yunus at Harun.me. Now on to our roundtable discussion. We have two people to introduce you to. They are in organizations that are making differences all around the world, starting with Jean Lyon Iragina, who's in Jackson, Mississippi. He's the CEO of Isario Foundation, which improves reading and writing skills in Rwanda. We also have Liz Braden from Indianapolis, Indiana. She is a millennial motivator for Building Tomorrow, which helps build schools in Uganda. Thanks, guys, for joining us today. Now, what we would like to do first is I'm going to play a clip from my interview, and then I want you guys to respond to it. So take a look. If you were to give a message to the students who are looking up to you, what would you say to them?
Well, I would say young people are a completely different generation today. Unlike the previous generation of young people, this generation is much more powerful than they were because of the technology in their hand. This technology was never available to any generation in history. Today's generation has access to information, access to each other. They have a network, global network of their own and so on. And they're much more faster in their response pattern because they can make decisions very quickly because of the technology that they have. So my question to young people is, you now become aware that you are more powerful than ever before that happened in history. And then you ask yourself, what use you're going to make of this power that you have?
So Liz, as you heard, Muhammad Yunus says that you have the power to change the world. What are you doing with your life to be able to help change the world?
Yeah, so I work for Building Tomorrow, which is a social profit organization that empowers young people to create social change. And we work with young people, specifically college students in the U.S., and encourage them to raise funds to build primary schools in Uganda. A lot of what Muhammad Yunus says is what I say to my students, is that every dollar can make a difference, and they're in a very unique position where they have 1,000 peers around them at college that if they can get everybody on board, they could raise a lot of money and make a really big impact. So. And
how about you, Jean? What are you doing to make a difference?
Yeah, I founded the Isario Foundation, which is a non-profit organization that is improving reading and writing skills in Rwanda. We saw there was a problem in Rwandan literacy, and we wanted to be part of the change as young people, young Rwandans who live in the United States.
And one thing he brought up there was technology, and because we have technology nowadays, that's a difference than when he was trying to make a difference years ago. How are you using technology in your organization, Jean, to be able to help others?
We really give a high importance on technology. We have already started to see if we can, instead of shipping printed books, can start using the Kindles. Last year, we were able to start the first electronic library in Rwanda, made by Amazon Kindles. The library was started in the Northern Province, and it's been a success. And we're looking forward to expand the program throughout the whole country.
Liz, do you think that you'd be able to accomplish your mission without the use of technology?
Definitely not. We have a full staff of 9 staff members in Uganda and then 4 in the U.S., and we spend a lot of our time communicating with each other through technology, through Skype, through obviously email, which is not that new, but it still is our bread and butter. And our staff in Uganda are also equipped with camera phones to take pictures of the sites that are under construction and send them to our staff in the U.S. so that we can let the students who helped build the school know about what's going on in Uganda, and then also kind of creating that connection between students here in the U.S. and communities in Uganda, and making sure that they know that everything that they're doing is being partnered with real people in a real community in Uganda.
Now, both of you guys have college students on the staff of helping your organizations, and you're both young, relatively young yourselves. So what is it about helping others and in organizations that are making a big difference? What is it that draws you personally to help others?
I myself was driven by the change I wanted to see in my country. when I was a high school student, I started writing a book that I ended up publishing at the end of my high school. And then I got a scholarship, a presidential scholarship from Rwanda to come to the United States. Arrived here, I immediately saw a big difference between both education systems, and which actually was the reading skills that students here have that back home students don't have. So in order to bridge the gap, that's where the idea of starting this sort of foundation came from.
Can you talk a little bit about the progress, Gene, that you've made so far with the organization? Now, 2 years in since you started it, what have you been able to do so far?
Yeah, so far we have been able to impact 32,000 students, which are in schools in Rwanda. We've been able to ship more than 16,000 books to Rwanda and donate them to schools. As I said, we started the first electronic library in Rwanda. We've trained teachers and young writers a couple of times with our partners from the United States. And we've been able to conduct a lot of reading and writing campaigns and competitions.
Through those competitions, what have you been able to accomplish? Do you see an improvement in students?
Yeah, of course. Actually, the competitions are there to make sure that the students are reading the books that we are giving to them. Our main way to improve reading and writing skills in Rwanda is to make sure that people have access to the literacy materials. So after give them the books, we go back and check if the students read the books. So the best way to check that is to give them reading and writing competitions. So from there, we really see a big difference from the first reading and writing competition we did to the latest reading and writing competition that we did. We see that students are more now interested in reading, and they have improved their abilities in writing as well.
Very interesting. Now, Liz, I want to ask you, you said I think 12 schools were built so far?
Yes, we have 12 that are open, and then we just finished construction on our 13th academy that will open for classes in February. So we have another 6 that are under construction, and our hope is to have 60 by 2016.
Wow, what a huge undertaking that you and your group are trying to do. Can you talk about what you've done so far? You launched 7 years ago. What has the organization been able to accomplish with those 12 schools?
So each school is supported by a community, and we have seen a lot of development in those communities, and using the school as kind of a catalyst for other projects in the communities, and really just the very basic, success of putting a child in a classroom that's safe and providing the access to learning and access to education is a huge accomplishment in and of itself. This year we're launching more and more quality of education initiatives to make sure that the quality of education in our schools is the highest possible. But even just the simple task of being able to sign your name can make a big difference in the child's lives, as they can then open a bank account or progress economically that way.
So you are educating the very young generation there, but you think that it's having a broader effect on the community in general?
Yes, definitely. A lot of the communities where we work, all of our communities have to decide to donate the land and the labor, and a lot of the landowners themselves have said, I've never been to primary school, I never learned how to read and write, but this is something that I know will benefit the community and make a really big impact on the children. So we've seen the community really kind of recognize the impact of education and the value of education, and that alone kind of starts the journey for the students that, once I leave primary school, I'll have support from my family and from other community members to go on to secondary school and hopefully university. So even that basic understanding of the value of education and what it can do for the community is a big deal.
Next question is for you, Gene. Now, you're helping people in Rwanda, which you're originally from Rwanda, right?
Hmm. Yes, I'm
And
from Rwanda.
and you're working with other students here in the U.S. How do you think, how have they been affected and feeling working with people who they're probably not familiar with, that are in a very far place that I'm sure not a lot of people have been to Rwanda. So how's your team been working on the organization?
Um, Actually, I'm gonna take this on two perspectives. The first one is from the community where I live here at Millsaps College. When I got here in 2010, most people knew Rwanda only from the 1994 genocide and from the movie called The Hotel Rwanda. Starting this sort of foundation was kind of another introduction of Rwanda, what Rwanda can be, and what Rwandans, young Rwandans, can do to their country. So I was very humbled by the feedback I got from my school, from my teachers, my advisors, and my fellow students. Um, from Rwanda, I remember once visiting a school in the northern province of Rwanda, and we had donated, 500 books to the school like 6 months before. And then I was talking to the director of the school, visiting the library, just checking if the books are in the library, and checking if the students have access to the books. And he said one thing that really, really touched me, and I was very humbled by that. He said, since you donated books to us, now the library is always open, and it's very hard for students to get the books because the books are always in the hands of the students reading them. So I immediately saw, that change that just happened in only 6 months. Now students were, encouraged. They were very interested in reading the books because the books we are donating are newer books than the books they used to have, and also, there are books that they feel comfortable reading, stories, novels from America. So that's where I was like, what we're doing is really rewarding, and it's affecting someone's life.
Wow. And Liz, have you had any experiences where being able to be involved in building tomorrow has had an effect on you, where you really realize that you were really making a change?
Yeah, so I've been technically working with Building Tomorrow since I was a student at the University of Virginia, so 7 years now. And while I was a student, I was helping to raise money to build a school, and we raised enough to build a school. And as a student, it was really important for me to be involved in something that I knew I could make a real impact on. And it was encouraging because I knew even $1 would buy 10 bricks in Uganda, and 6,000 could build a classroom. So if I could even reach that point, I could make an impact. And for me, when I actually went to visit Uganda for the first time with Building Tomorrow, I went to the school that UVA built, and I don't know what the deal was. I had been with Building Tomorrow for 6 years, but I still didn't understand that that school would be there and be standing, and that students would go there every day and learn every day, and I didn't have to do anything else to impact that. It was something that I did 6 years ago at that point, and it was standing, and every day students showed up and got to go to school there. So for me, that was really just a funny impact that I had, because it was, I should have known that that school was existing and that students were there every day, but actually seeing it brought about that realization, and it made a big difference to me that, they didn't necessarily care that I helped fundraise 6 years ago. It was their school now, and it was something that they owned themselves, and when they showed up, they called it their own school, and the community really, they had their own crest on their uniforms that was for the Building Tomorrow Academy of Jita. They had their own colors for the school, their own song, and it wasn't something that students from UVA helped build. It was something that they helped build themselves. So it was really kind of cool to have that realization of, oh man, I did help build a school, but also but it doesn't really matter because they have owned it themselves, and it's going to continue to operate because of the community support.
And Liz, now for anyone who is thinking about either joining a nonprofit or maybe even has an idea to help others either in their community or in another community, what advice would you have for them?
Man, I have a lot of advice. My advice would be, I'll say two things. First of all, I always tell students, especially if you're still in college and you have some support, to really just be bold and kind of go for it. I have a lot of students that say, hey, I have this idea, but I'm going to wait till I graduate. And, if it's what you're passionate about, go for it now. There's no harm in failing. There's no harm in really just putting yourself out there and recognizing that this is the time to do it. On the other hand, my other suggestion is to always have community partners, and a lot of everything that we do in Uganda could not be done unless we had people in Uganda that were on board with what we're doing, the community being on board, and then our staff also being very willing to tell us when we're being stupid, and that when an idea won't work in Uganda, they tell us right away. You need somebody who's going to kind of battle against your ideas, but also help them succeed. So, two things.
And Jean, how about you? Do you have any advice for students?
Yeah, it's now very easy to start an organization and managing the people in the organization, making sure the organization is getting enough resources to conduct its activities, and also making sure that you keep the credibility of the organization. So the advice I would give to anybody, any student who would want to start an organization is, first of all, to see what he's passionate about. If you want to solve this or that issue, you really want to be passionate about the issue that you're gonna be solving. And also, they should be aware of the challenges ahead. At the very beginning, it was really hard. As Liz was saying, you're gonna see people who are gonna be willing to help you succeed, and you're gonna see people who are gonna willing, who don't want to see you succeed. Like myself, I used to work for a newspaper back home, and a friend of mine owned the newspaper. And when I started the Self Foundation, the guy was not happy about it, and so he banned the publication of Self Foundation in his newspaper. But fortunately, me and my team were able to find other ways to make sure that the people of Rwanda, the schools, know what we're doing and that there are opportunities for them to get books from us. So it's not just only rewarding, but it's also challenging, but it's very doable for somebody who is very passionate.
What an impact both of you have made. Thanks very much for your time today, and thanks for your efforts that you've made. Jean Lyon Iragina from Isario Foundation and Liz Braden from the Millennial Motivator for Building Tomorrow. Thanks very much for your time, and you can see the full conversation that we had with both of them at Harun.me.